So here's the problem. There are no good solutions when it comes to Iran. I mean, yes, the U.S. hit their enrichment facilities a couple weeks ago, but there's so much more to their nuclear program than that. And now we have to wonder if those strikes press Iran to actually develop a nuclear weapon. So to talk about all of that and more, we're joined today by Marie Harf. Marie is the executive director of the Perry World House at the University of Pennsylvania. She's a Democratic contributor on Fox and a former senior official in the Obama State Department and CIA, where she worked on the Iran nuclear deal, or JCPOA. And with that, let's get into the conversation. All right, Marie, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really interested to get your thoughts on some of this Iran stuff.
I'm happy to be here. We have a few things to talk about.
Yeah,
no shortage of news.
Well, there was one that just came out that I thought we could start with. It was an NBC News article where they said that one of the 3 enrichment sites in Iran hit by the United States last night was mostly destroyed, but the other 2 were not as badly damaged and may have only been degraded to a point where nuclear enrichment could resume in the next several months. So I think this kind of shines a spotlight on this question that we've had for a while of what was the damage done that misses what else needs to be done in this whole conversation. So would you be able to start there? Like, what else has to be done around the Iranian nuclear program?
Right. So I found that NBC report fascinating. It confirmed what a lot of us suspected and have long said, that Iran's nuclear program is so diffuse, so deeply buried underground. There's so much of it that a military strike would only be temporary and would not be able to destroy it. So I think what has been clear from that report and a few other intelligence reports, including the Israelis who have said some things as well, it is clear that at the facilities, right? So there's a number of different enrichment facilities. There's other facilities where they do research and development and keep the stockpile, that was not destroyed. It is clear that a lot of it was damaged and some of it badly damaged, but it wasn't destroyed. And so setting aside the facilities, the 2 other things I think you need to look at in terms of how quickly Iran could reconstitute or what the state of the program is today, in addition to the facilities, is number 1, where the already enriched stockpile is. We don't have a clear answer to that. It is probably the truth that they moved it or dispersed it or did something with it before American strikes, which were telegraphed. That could be a possibility. So the stockpile that they already have, setting aside whether they can ever enrich anything else. And then the second piece, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, is the mindset of Iranian leaders. It was our assessment, it was the intelligence community's assessment that for decades, since 2003, I think it was, and an intelligence assessment that came out during the Bush administration, that the Iranian leadership had made a decision not to try and develop a nuclear weapon. They were doing a bunch of things that allowed them to, if they wanted to, but they had not made a decision to actually make one. And so today, if you're the Iranian leadership, you look at your nuclear facilities, they're definitely damaged, would take money and time to rebuild. A bunch of your scientists have gotten murdered, killed. Your stockpile is somewhere. Do you respond to this by taking the program underground, right? Taking whatever stockpile you have, trying to rush it together in some crude bomb and do a nuclear test in the next 6 months to show you're not going to be cowed by American and Israeli strikes? Or do you read the writing on the wall and say, I mean, our proxies in the region have been decimated. The Americans and Israelis finally struck our nuclear program. Are we really going to invest all this money to rebuild it? And you go back to some sort of negotiating process. So those are the unknowns right now. But it's clear that their program was set back, but not destroyed.
That's such a fascinating question here that we just speculate on. But the idea of, does something like this force them to decide it's not worth it, we're not going down that route, or it's the only option we have? Do you have any, what does your gut say about that? Do you think that these strikes move them more in the direction of a nuclear weapon, or are we likely to see some sort of negotiation here?
It's a really hard question to guess on. I think if I had to put money on it, I'm a poker player. If I had to put money on it, I would guess that it drives them deeper underground, and at least initially that they look for ways to accelerate the program. And I say that for a few reasons. The first is they look at countries like Iraq and Libya and Syria, countries that did not become nuclear weapon states, were attacked or gave up their weapons programs, and they were much weaker as a result. Now, not just as a result of that, but they never got back to where they had been. They look at North Korea, who did get a nuclear weapon. No one's bombing North Korea. So I think they took lessons from that maybe the United States and Israel will be less inclined to attack in the future if we have a nuclear deterrent. But the Iranian government has politics, right? We often think of it just as the supreme leader, and the supreme leader is certainly in charge. He's also very old. There's not a clear succession plan, and he's been really weakened by all of these losses they've taken in the region. So I don't have a good sense. I hope our intelligence community does. I don't know if they do, about if there are internal conversations or divisions in their leadership right now. Some people saying, hey, let's not beg trouble here. We made a decision not to get a weapon. Let's go back to the negotiating table. Why do we want bombs raining down on North Tehran again?
Something that I'd be interested in your thought, since you worked on JCPOA, that is no longer at this point. I think is part of the reason we're here. But if we can move past that to just the last couple months, where there is this talk that Iran was getting close, or at least moving in that direction, and it feels like the military strikes open that door to what we're talking about of Iran. Do they have to move faster or move away entirely? What other options were available? Because it feels like we're choosing between two bad options at that point.
Yes, I mean, I think you are right that even when we negotiated the JCPOA, and the 10th anniversary was just a few days ago on July 14th, the options at that time, and I think today, are still some sort of negotiated settlement where Iran gives up key parts of their nuclear program for sanctions relief. We monitor it. We do all the things so we can see if they're cheating. That's one. I think that's the most durable still and the most likely to succeed for a bunch of reasons with the least amount of risk, but that's my opinion. The second is sustained military action over many years. I mean, you served in the military. It is not as easy as dropping a few bombs and going home. So let's say these bombs that we drop set the Iranian program back 6 months to 2 years. Okay, so in 2 years we're bombing again. We're mowing the grass every 2 years, right? The third option, which nobody likes to talk about, is deterrence. And if Iran makes a decision to get a nuclear weapon, allow them to. I don't think anyone's considering that, right? But North Korea did it. Pakistan and India did it. Israel has nuclear weapons. I'm not arguing for that. But those are three not great options, right? That's why when we did the JCPOA, and this is because of decades of American administrations, Iran just kept moving their program forward. Through George Bush, through, Bill Clinton, all these decades. And they got to a place where you only have the options you have. It is a fantasy to believe that there is some world in which Iran will give up any ability to enrich ever for civilian purposes. Let American inspectors crawl over every military facility they have in the country. Like, we were at the place we were at, and you have to negotiate from reality. And so I think a diplomatic solution still remains the best option unless American presidents, and it's Americans, no one else can reach these facilities. Only the American military can, as of now. If we want to keep doing this year after year after year and drive Iran underground, they just voted in Iran to suspend work with the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. They had been working with them, not perfectly, but the IAEA had some insight to the program, and now they're not going to have any. So there are real consequences to getting rid of diplomacy.
It seems like, strangely, we haven't heard a lot about talks. They were, front and center until Israel started striking. And then, of course, Iran said, we're not going to talk right now. And since then, I kind of thought that we'd be pushing
Me too.
the Iranian people towards like, all right, now let's go, and we're not. So
Yeah.
if we do go back that direction, what's a good end state? What's a goal at this point?
Same thing. I've been very surprised by that. And I think partly that's because, and I obviously have partisan and policy feelings here, but I think it is a fair statement that Donald Trump is not a leader who gets engrossed in nitty-gritty details of diplomatic negotiations and thinks deals can be made very quickly. And I think that's why the first round of talks that they were engaged in with Iran in Oman fell apart. Because the Trump administration was like, 60 days, come on, where are we? Why isn't this done? It's like, it took us 3 years of intense, this is not just a real estate deal, right? It's not even a trade deal. So anyways, all that to say, what is a good outcome? I mean, the best outcome is the best outcome is some scenario where Iran gets rid of its enriched uranium stockpile. Under the JCPOA, it got sent to Russia, who has a lot of experience with nuclear stockpiles, for better or worse, that they do something with it, there can be a consortium. There's a lot of different ways you can do that they disconnect their enrichment centrifuge cascades, and that there is some version of inspections. I do not know if that is possible. I don't know if the administration on the American side is willing to give any sanctions relief, which has to accompany a deal. I do not think Iran is so weak that they will just give up things without getting something. That's not how diplomacy generally works, but unless there's a complete surrender, like at the end of World War II, that's not where we are, right? So in my mind, look, at this point, I would actually say in my mind, the best thing I'm hoping for is just a return to talks. And not this slow escalation where Iran pulls back, they start enriching more, we say we're going to sanction more. There's this like slow tit for tat that I just don't think is going to solve the problem. And I think it gives Iran, quite frankly, a lot of leverage time and leverage to actually try and see if they can rush to something close to a weapon.
The timeline here is something I wanted to get your thoughts on, because it seems like if we go down that route again, what we will hear ahead of time is Iran is a week, a month, 6 months away from a nuclear weapon. And it'll be underneath this video, I guarantee it, in the comments, where people will say, Iran's been a month away from a nuclear weapon for 20 years.
Correct. Exactly.
What on earth? Can you explain that a little bit? Like, why had the timelines are just so confusing to try to keep up with here?
Totally. I think there's two things at play here. The first is, I think people like Prime Minister Netanyahu have used scary sounding timelines for decades for political purposes. There's videos that came out after we struck Fordo that showed him saying they're 2 weeks or a month away for, like you said, 20 years. I think it is useful for him politically and in pushing the United States to be tougher on Iran. The technical reason is, if you have a certain amount of highly enriched uranium and a certain setup in terms of technical nuclear facilities in your country, if you make a decision to take that highly enriched uranium and try to weaponize it, which is a totally separate process, right? How do you take that and put it on a warhead? Which I'm sure your viewers and listeners, these are folks that have much more military experience than I do, but that technical process. The estimates you hear, the time it would probably take them, the estimates vary, but part of those is the time it would take them to do that. The other thing you hear often is the time it would take to go from the highly enriched uranium to weapons grade, right? And they have a lot of highly enriched uranium that is already enriched quite high, but it would have to be enriched further to become weapons grade to then be weaponized. Those are two separate processes, right? So when you hear people talk about breakout time, we said the JCPOA took us from a month of breakout time to over a year. That's the time it would take to break out, and by that we mean enough highly enriched uranium, further enriched, to build a bomb. That didn't include the time it would take to build a bomb, which is a very complicated process. You can try and jerry-rig some crude bomb to explode something to try and test. That's actually what I think they might try and do. But when we would say a month, that's the time it would take with the stockpile they have and the infrastructure they have to get enough highly enriched uranium to make one bomb. And under the JCPOA, our judgment was that it was over a year. And that was if they like ripped up the deal, went underground, kicked out the inspectors, because they had to basically start from scratch. Trump pulled out of the JCPOA. Iran started enriching. And so before the Israel-Iran-US war, it had fallen to probably under 2 weeks because Iran had been enriching a lot, which was stupid on their part. They were poking the bear. And so today, I would be curious what the intelligence community's assessment of breakout is, given the infrastructure hits they took. They still have the stockpile, but they need a place to further enrich it. But still, a year is even not that. I mean, these are not long timelines. I mean, This is why we say when other countries in the region or in the world talk about flirt with nuclear weapons programs, once you get to a certain point, your options are not good, right? As we were talking about. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You can't kill every Iranian that knows anything about how to make nuclear fuel, right? So there's such a push in the diplomatic world to not get to this point. Because once you're at this point, you have crappy options.
So right now, the JCPOA looks great. At least it was. But it clearly caught a lot of flack, and I think I heard people refer to it as it was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't an end state. If you could go back now, what would you have done differently around the JCPOA that maybe would have seen it survive the first Trump presidency, and maybe we'd be in a different place today? Is there anything that stands out?
That's such a good question. It's funny, I often say publicly that of everything I worked on during the Obama administration, there are a bunch of policies I can criticize. This is the one where I'm like, this was really good. Like, I think this was a very good policy outcome. I honestly don't know. I mean, technically, the deal was incredibly sound. There's not a technical piece of it. One of the biggest criticisms was that it was time-bound. It expired. I don't think that if we had gotten a deal that had further timelines, that some of the criticism, like from Donald Trump, would have changed. I think it probably would have changed some people's minds. If we could have gotten a forever deal, of course that would have been better. Because the technical pieces, I think, were very, very, very sound. My biggest thoughts about how the JCPOA ended up to be such a political football, I mean, when Kamala Harris was asked during the campaign last year, the biggest threat facing the United States, she didn't say China. She didn't say any number of issues. She said Iran. Iran has this stranglehold on American foreign policy, conventional wisdom, that it's this 500-pound gorilla and that it's this existential threat and that it's one of our top threats in the world. And it is a bad country, or government, I shouldn't say a bad country. Their government does very bad things that are at odds with our interests and that threaten our allies and partners in the region, for sure. But the idea that we can do deals with Russia about nuclear weapons, that we can have an embassy in Moscow, that we can talk to a whole bunch of bad people in the world, and somehow Iran is like the one country that we can't ever do a deal with. I just think that it has this, in the American political system across the aisle. I mean, I think if you put the JCPOA through Congress, like we had to go through this crazy vote in Congress, we would lose a ton more Democrats today. Because there's just this idea that Iran is this powerful threat to us. And if the last 2 years have shown us anything, it's that in some ways they're a paper tiger. That Israel mainly could destroy a lot of Hezbollah's capability, destroy a lot of Hamas's capability, kill senior terrorist leaders in Tehran. So I think so much of it was like political and myths and narratives, and like it wasn't about the deal itself.
To be fair, there's plenty of things in both directions where simply because the other administration put it forward, it becomes bad. And there's no details that could change that. I wonder if, to your point, again, maybe we could shake someone and say, now is the time to negotiate, because look at how weakened so many aspects of the Iranian regime are. Maybe it'd be a good time to push that forward.
Well, and that's why it's so interesting when they were negotiating and details would leak out. I kept posting on Blue Sky because I'm like a liberal who loves Blue Sky now. This is the JCPOA, right? Like these details would leak out, and it's like, well, they're going to get rid of their stockpile for sanctions relief and inspectors. And I'm like, yes, there are not infinite number of ways to solve this problem. But you're right. You're totally right. I think that there is a fear of Iran based on historical legacies between our two countries and very real, terrible things Iran does. And I will say, my party, Democrats, we sometimes got in trouble in the first term of Trump when he would do something crazy and we would say, the sky's going to fall, World War III is going to start, the Iranians are going to bomb America, or what, he kills Qasem Soleimani and I'm hair on fire on TV, like, this is destabilizing. And that stuff didn't happen. Bad things happened. I mean, Iran's nuclear program shot forward because Trump tore up the deal, right? That is a very bad thing. So I think a lot about sort of public narratives and messaging about some of these things, because I don't want there to be this, oh, Obama did it, it's bad. If Trump does it, it's good. Like that's a bigger problem than the JCPOA, but
it might be a little bit bigger in this one topic.
I know. But I think about it with this topic a lot because we had their nuclear program under lock and key. We had cameras. Like, I can't help but think of a world in which that never got torn up.
Well, there's still a chance, right? We're still waiting for some negotiations to come forward, so hopefully we'll have some news there in the near future. But Marie, thank you so much for taking the time. Where's a good place for people to follow you and to keep up with what you're doing?
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I love your work and I'm just really grateful to be. I will talk about Iran all day if I can. Follow me on Blue Sky.
Here we go.
It's just at Marie Harf or whatever the Blue Sky, way to follow people is. That is the best way. I really love this platform. I have a lurker Twitter account, but I don't engage on it. And I think Blue Sky is just a good place for some of these conversations we're having and a healthier space online to debate some of these things, because I want to hear from people who disagree. And that's the best place.
Marie, thank you so much again for taking the time.
Thank you.
So thank you so much to Marie for taking the time to chat today. Hopefully we've got some good news on the Iran front we can address here before too long. But be sure to follow Marie on Blue Sky. That link will be in the description below. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.